Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Europe is Coming podcast. We're back for our weekly update. My name's Adam. I'm the host of the Europe is Coming podcast. And as always, I'm joined by John. How are you, John? How has your week been?
It's good. We're in the Mallorcan weather looks like the UK weather right now.
But yeah, you were saying before we came on, sad times.
Yeah, sad times, but we can't complain too much about the weather. But I think it's that I still have, I'm still British. I still have the conversations about the weather in me,
It feels like a staple. Do many other people in Mallorca kind of indulge in the weather chat, or is it you bringing the fight?
I think there's something about a UK person complaining about the weather that's just culturally the right thing to do.
They sort of expect it of you, so if you don't, that you feel like you're letting them down.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice. Well, we haven't jumped on to talk about the weather, although I'm sure we could, both being British. We are doing our usual weekly update, and there's been quite a lot going on in the CrossFit space, considering we're not really in the season of anything at the moment. It's kind of starting to get open announcements and things like that. And we haven't really got any comps going on at the moment, but there's some stuff coming to the surface. So where would you like to start this week?
It's a good point. We mentioned this a period ago. This was like the Wodapalooza time. This would usually fill this whole kind of space. You'd have Dubai, Wodapalooza. But I think we spoke about it because it had maybe been leaked just before the podcast last week, but it hadn't been confirmed. Was the WFP season had got officially announced? And I think it was more or less in keeping with what the rumor had gone out about it. So I think it could be an interesting. I think it's interesting to follow. Obviously, it affects the space so much, and right now it's just going to be speculation more than anything. Who goes, who doesn't go. But I think it's interesting to dive into a bit.
Yeah, just speaking of which, I actually have. Here we go. You can see here we've got the tour schedule. So this is Tour Stop 1 qualifier at the moment. So you've got like Mexico City, which has been brought in, the qualifier, Tour Stop 2 qualifier, the Grand Park Pro as it's now being called, which is Tour Stop 2, and then the finals and the World Fitness Final. Sorry, the World's qualifier and the World Fitness Final. Fitness finals. Oh, I put my teeth back in today, which we kind of knew were going to be in Copenhagen. Didn't they? I heard. I can't remember if it was you told me this or someone else, but didn't they say as the event ended in Copenhagen that these were getting they were going to go back the following year?
Yes, I think that was the final announcement. I think everyone was expecting the season, and what then happened was they go, okay, well, the 2026 finals are going to be back in Copenhagen. So they seem, I think there was a lot of question if they go ahead. They seem committed to the season. Everyone had a great time in Copenhagen. It's going to be interesting. It's just going to be very interesting to follow basically who goes. So which of the top athletes are going to be there? Does it end up being that you end up with a kind of second tier competition? So not necessarily all of the top names are there, but you've got the names that would maybe be placing kind of like between top 20, somewhere around that at the games rather than the top 10. And I think there's some key things in there regarding the dates that become they're just overlapping. The biggest thing that I saw was the first tour is in Mexico, and it's the same date as Copa Sur. So it's like the first, probably the biggest competition in the whole of Latin America. They put the first the competition at exactly the same time, which I thought it was an interesting choice of dates. Like I don't think you could have.
Yeah, so I'll bring it up on screen here so you can see that here you've got WFP's Tour Stop 1. And like you say, there's quite a lot going on there. Forest Throwdown, Magic City Games, Copa Sur as well. Like it's quite a pretty chunky weekend, that first weekend of May, by the looks of things, in terms of competition.
Yeah. And also you're coming off the back of, they've put their qualifier in now. I'm sure the dates were kind of thought because of the Open, but they put that weekend just before the Open. Then you go through the Classic 3 weeks, the Open, which for majority of athletes won't be too stressful. It's just that one workout. Then quarterfinals, you do have to be a bit aware of. There's been so many issues of athletes not getting through into semis. With the caveat of each competition is going to be a bit different this year because the semi-finals are like operated by independent groups. But should you need the quarterfinals in order to qualify through or get a certain rank, then it can be quite stressful with the video review process. Make sure that you're reading the rules correctly. So, it's a weekend of note, and then you go straight into the whole of the semi-final season, and dotted in the middle is Tour Stop 1. And a trip to Mexico for Europe is pretty far. So you'd have to factor that in. And then also for the US, you have to leave the US, go out. Depending on which semi-finals you want to compete at, it's going to be a factor. I mean, if the Europeans are going out there, it's only 2 weeks before French Throwdown, the first European. And so, that will probably have some impact. And then for the guys in the US, I mean, realistically, if you manage to qualify in the Mayhem Classic, which is the first one, then it's maybe a good option because, good prize money. It's not going to be too stressful. You've already got your ticket to the game, so you can kind of program in the training for the games after that first tour stop.
Yeah, maybe there might be some people kind of listening that sort of aren't aware of some of these competitions. The Mayhem Classic is quite well known now. I'm sure many people do know it, but it's Rich Froning's gym and collective, CrossFit Mayhem. They have a classic, and they seem to have invited so many people. Like, it's all the major hitters from the invite list. So we don't know who's accepted or whether anyone has accepted yet. I don't think that's been published, but
for the Mayhem,
yeah,
they used the Rogue qualifying system, which was an interesting choice because the Rogue qualifying systems had some. It's when they introduced it, there's like it kind of weights different competitions and creates a bit strange. It was like because of the way they've done it, it creates some strange scenarios where, for example, in the Open, you're only getting points if you finished inside the top 20. And at the Games, some years, you're only getting points if you finish inside the top 20. So it's like you could have athletes who were finishing inside the top 20 at the Open, gaining points, who would actually end up finishing higher than people who were at the Games, but only finishing 21st. So it created some strange dynamics. But, these are just little nuances. In essence, the list holds the more or less the top 20 in the world, which then I presume they're then sending out invites to those guys.
Yeah, it looked like it. Like someone, Laura Horvath, stuck in the names for me, just in terms of, obviously, we kind of don't know where she's going to be competing this year, whether she's going to be taking part in the CrossFit season or whether it's just the WFP. So to have her potentially at Mayhem could be really interesting. What about, do you want to give a bit of background on Copa Surf? People aren't aware of that event and why it kind of could be problematic for WFP.
It's just been for, I don't know how many years it's been like the regionals or the semi-final of Latin America. It's in Brazil, which is hugely popular, where CrossFit is hugely popular. And obviously a lot of the Latin American athletes will want to get their ticket from Copa Sur. And that means it will probably take away some of the athletes that you could have potentially had competing in Mexico. Latin America, in the same way as Europe, really it's got a huge CrossFit community, but it hasn't had the big events. And so it could have been a great opportunity to get a lot of Latin America, but I think they're going to be quite conflicted with the Copa Sur dates because the athletes will want that games ticket.
Yeah.
You start playing a bit of a risk. Like if you want to go flying to Mexico to go on Tour Stop 1 to earn points, because the hard thing is if you don't go to one of the tour stops, the chances of you doing well in the season are really low. Therefore, you need to be at the first tour. If you go to the first tour, it's like you're putting a bit of a risk for semi-finals. And again, for the top athletes, maybe it's they won't have troubles getting through semis for the top guys, probably top 10. But the next thing is they want to go, okay, do this next tour, but then they've got the tour after the games, or only a month after the games. Okay, I go games, and I've only got a month. I don't get to rest, and then you've got Rogue, who've just announced their dates for the same weekend again in Scotland. And I think it just becomes a bit of a tiring season. I mean, we it's probably the thing we most like to talk about. But because it's not a coordinated season, it just gets a bit too much for the athletes, I think.
Well, also part of the reason we mentioned it is because it's so new. Like up until last year, I mean, we obviously had more events, with Rogue and some of these established events, and kind of WFP kind of adding to that was the first time that's really happened. And I think we've talked about it, but athletes kind of having to be like, okay, well, what do I do here? And we had things we hadn't necessarily seen before, and where you could see someone who had probably been at all the comps and how they performed, but then you had someone like James Bragg who seemed to go to all of them and seemed to manage to, I don't know, been in around the podium nearly every event. So, and he was doing, I think he was doing triathlons and Ironman competitions as well. So maybe that is the benefit of being young.
It is 100% the benefit of being young, but also anyone who's seen James backstage is like he has like infinite energy. It's quite impressive to watch. So I think if someone can handle a longer season, it's definitely him. But yeah, he's like just a bundle of energy. I mean, the amount of stuff that he's able to do, and also he's walking around talking to everyone, just finishing events. He's a nice guy, but yeah, a lot of energy.
Yeah, we'll see how he manages to carry on through, whether he can carry that through a full season this year as well. And what's your gut feel about what's going to happen this first week in May? Do you think that we're going to end up missing quite a lot of athletes in the Tour Stop 1, or do you think we're going to get sort of just us, people trying to go everywhere? What's your kind of initial read on this?
I think because of the way it's structured, it may end up being that the top athletes are going to fight to go to the games because of the prestige, and also you end up with a higher prize money. And then you're going to get like a bit of a second tier maybe at the World Fitness Project, because it's going to be hard to do both. And for the top guys, like, if they can go, let's say games hits in and around the same prize money, maybe even more if the Open does well, and then they manage to do well at Rogue, the prize money that you can get just by doing those two competitions is huge. And they also have like a lot of prestige. A lot of the athletes love Rogue. Rogues just managed to cement themselves and part of the season, a place where every athlete wants to go. So it's just hard. It's just hard to fit into that. And I think you'd have to offer something extremely special, or a lot of prize money in order to have athletes start to question. And I think like the total prize money of the tours, if you win everything, it's like around 170,000. So even if you win all tour events and the finals, you still end up less than you would at the games or Rogue.
Yeah,
the difference being that they pay down more. Yeah, so you see here, yeah.
What's an article to say that they had increased the season prize purse to 1.96 million,
which is huge.
Which is awesome as well. That we're increasing prize purses for the athletes to be able to more and more compete as professional and get compensated as such.
I think it's cool that they're leaning into it as well. They've gone for their season. Okay, it was announced late. I think probably announcing early would have helped. And they've kind of done some changes. Like they've now increased it to 50 athletes. I think that was a good decision, because this challenger one was a bit strange, where some of the challengers would beat the elites in workouts, but they couldn't get enough points because they're always capped. So that was probably a sensible change, but kind of merging challenger and elite. And I think there's some nuances on the point system as well, which will probably make because tracking the final leaderboard was quite hard to do. So I think some changes
Yeah.
have come in there. But
Do you know what they are? Those changes?
No, I haven't followed it as much. I just remember trying to work out the leaderboard for the finals, because it was really confusing where you kind of had to put two leaderboards in place. So because the current leaderboard that was happening may have no effect on the overall leaderboard, in the sense that there might have been athletes who, say, hadn't done the first tour stop who were ahead of an athlete. So therefore, it didn't matter on the current leaderboard if you jumped ahead of that athlete, because they weren't ranking on the other tour. So it kind of created this. It was just hard to track and follow, and especially when you've not done it before. I mean, I think it's like anything new. It can be tricky. I'm sure for people who've not followed CrossFit as closely as we have, the leaderboard can end up being a bit confusing. You're like, why is this? Like, they have like weighted point systems or different things, so it can maybe be a bit tricky to track. But I have to say, this was like an added layer of complexity that was a bit hard to follow.
Yeah, we talked about that on a previous episode. It might have been actually the recap of the finals, around point weighting and how that changed and when that changed in the CrossFit Games era. But also, I think, I mean, to be honest, perfectly honest, I completely couldn't follow the finals leaderboard. I wasn't even sure what, when things were, they were putting the placings up on social media, and I saw them and I was like, oh, cool. And then I was having to double check and I was kind of thinking to myself, is that the overall or is that for this competition? And I stopped caring eventually, because I was like, well, it just is what it is. And I presumed it was overall, but it was a shame that you kind of didn't really know what was going on from that perspective.
Because if you scroll down here as well, you get and this is like the finals payouts, which, it's pretty huge. Like for an athlete being able to walk away with $170,000 for winning 3 competitions is big. I also think another thing that plays in is sponsors. Like, if sponsors are pushing for athletes to go towards the games, then that can really influence things.
Mm-hmm. Is there any sense of that? Like, I mean, because obviously WFP has got 2 major sponsors in Adidas and Red Bull. So would they, because there are some athletes who are sponsored by those brands as well, would they not be kind of pushing them to kind of go to tour stops?
I think each kind of contract is, would be different, but in general, I'd say that if a brand's sponsoring within CrossFit, they want to get the most visibility in that space. And so if the visibility is happening at the CrossFit Games, then the brand would want the athlete to be at the CrossFit Games. There might be some pressure in that regard. And I think it depends on the level of contract, where they want them to be, etc.
Okay. And what's your thoughts on the pay split here for both kind of stops 1 and 2? And
it's an interesting one. So I think it's nice that each athlete can, that it's kind of more balanced down. So, like at the games, the first to second jump is just, I mean, that's a bit extreme this year. I think it went from like 250 to 50. It's like this crazy drop. But I think there's something more enticing that if they'd have weighted the first prize, that really brings the athletes in. Like, if they get to a point where it's like $500,000 for first place, it's like this number where athletes going, oh wow, okay, this is huge. And I think that in order to be an athlete, you have to be quite positive and have a lot of self-belief. So a lot of the athletes probably go in like, oh, well, I've got a shot at winning this. And that's like a shot of winning then $500,000, which is this huge number. And it's be something that had never been done in the space. So I think there's probably like this ability to raise the bar by weighting the the first place prizes.
Yeah. And do you have any thoughts on the fact that it goes 1 to 30 in terms of prize money? Is that expected now, or is that a positive thing? Because I don't know, I might be wrong here, but it feels like, obviously you want to see people get paid, but from a prize money perspective, it kind of feels like maybe you could do it like 1 to 20, and then, like you say, you can start putting some more prize money up towards the upper echelons, or even 1 to 15, 1 to 10. What's your feeling around that?
Yeah, I think that's a big, like, if you know that you're going to go to a competition and not lose money, that's like the first thing. Okay, you know that there's going to be this, be it $5,000 or wherever the amount is, and then, as you say, actually loading up 1, 2, and 3, there might be a way to entice the bigger names in. Because a lot of, just having a lot of money, say in 10th to 5th, a lot of the athletes who are in 10th to 5th are fighting for 1, 2, and 3. And so that's where their kind of focus is on that prize money. But if they know that they're not going to lose any money going there for that weekend, then that's a big thing.
Yeah, because we talked about competitions like triathlons and Ironman at kind of like the professional level, and how that's quite an expensive endeavor. And I imagine that, I don't know what the prize purses are like for those events, but it's just, yeah, it's interesting. I don't know what the right answer is. I'm just intrigued do we start waiting towards the top of the leaderboards, like you say,
I think the reason
really make it.
I think, okay, it's nice because the athletes, you start to go, okay, they can make more money doing this, even when they place a bit lower. But I kind of think, to make a bit of a splash, that having the huge prize pots is something that brings people in and creates a bit of hype and excitement.
Okay. And then if we go back to the season view quickly, is there any other dates here that stand out to you that you think are problematic or exciting, or things that people should look out for?
You obviously have to choose your semi-finals well. If you're an athlete that's not too worried about qualifying, in the sense, you're probably in that top 20 in the world, more or less, then it's a bit different. But if you're a fringe athlete, planning your season can make the difference between you going to the games and not going to the games. And so if you try and plan out, I'm going to go here, here, and here, you end up with 4 competitions within this period. It's something that can be really destructive. Whereas, if you get a little bit of luck, in the sense that choosing the later competitions is often easier in some ways, because a lot of the athletes have qualified, and then some people don't show up. You get good with the programming. You might see an athlete make their breakthrough to the games in that way, rather than an athlete that's just tried to do everything and is then tired by the time that comes.
Yeah, there seems to be 2 approaches of either go early and try and get your ticket straight away, or, like you say, kind of go a bit later and wait for some people to have qualified. And yeah, it does seem that the risky move is doing the Roman Chronocroft approach, and just doing everything like he did. I don't know which season it was, whether it was last season or the season before, but I remember him being a literally every semi-final.
The early ticket is huge, mentally and physically. There's something about, for the athletes, being able to sit back and watch all the other semi-finals, and knowing that you've got your ticket helps. You've got the extra time to train. You can also take a proper deload. Like, if okay, you qualify that first weekend, you've got, some people are going to be qualifying all the way through to the online. So that's like till June. You've got, there's almost 2 months difference.
Yeah,
and that,
so it feels like the Mayhem Classic's going to be pretty spicy from probably attendees in that regard.
Yeah, there's, I think, a couple of things. One, it's US, so a lot of the US athletes will end up going there, and being first weekend, a lot of people want to gain their ticket. So I think you'll probably see the top names there, so they can punch their ticket early.
Okay, cool.
And it's also, again, the sport is sometimes not super easy to follow, but it's like each semi-final has different places, different allocations for the number of people who can go. So I believe it's 3, but I'd have to double check from Mayhem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a little frustrating that they don't just have it the same across the board, because that'd be a lot easier to follow. And but we've kind of talked about this, and hence the name of the podcast, Europe is Coming, because of, you know, limited places for Europe and limited competitions in Europe in the past. So yeah, so it can always be a bit tricky in terms of keeping an eye on all of that.
Yeah, the one thing I would say about this system, which is nice, previously when it was regionals, you get your set weekend and allocated by your region, and if that happened to be the last weekend, well, you couldn't do anything about it, and therefore you were almost more automatically put at a time disadvantage. Whereas this way, the athletes can choose, well, depending on the invite system, like Mayhem's doing Rogue. So if you're not on top of Rogue, you're not going to get an invite. But the kind of the system, and in essence, it's there that you can choose to go to an earlier one rather than a later one, and that's your choice. So it takes away the advantage or disadvantage a bit there.
Yeah, for sure. And also, I mean, it was always interesting with, especially when they all had the same programming, because you kind of, one of the benefits of going a bit later was that you got to watch everyone else do all the workouts and sort of game plan. I think it was like nearly every weekend there was a record set, like subsequent to the weekend it was like record set, and then someone did the record set again and the record set again of every workout normally.
It's an interesting discussion that time, because I actually think that it was some of the most exciting competitions that were there, and the workouts didn't change. You knew what the workouts were happening, and I think they got more exciting because you kind of knew the races that were occurring. The athletes tended to, I think the races got a bit closer because a lot of the athletes got better, level got similar. And so I think there was an interesting argument for actually knowing the programming early, and people being able to test. I can create some more interesting races as well.
Absolutely. I remember sort of watching those fondly, and exactly like you said, some of the workouts and the races were unreal, and then also just being able to benchmark. So I think I can't remember if you got prizes for getting world records back then, but just having something that you could call world records and watching people do them, kind of it created a buzz and a hype. And I just remember it being really, really, really fun. Like you say, maybe that is one of those looking back fondly on the past and just rose tinted glasses. But I do remember it being fun, like you say.
This is one thing. This is actually a suggestion that I'd put forward as well to the functional fitness federations, because I think that they needed to distinguish themselves a bit, and there's actually something there. I believe they're implementing. I don't know quite how, but they're creating these new world records of workouts, and because they've got these set tests, you know, be it like gymnastics or power or endurance, whatever it is, but they could have just made the test the same. So you like agree, okay, what is a power, what is the power test, what is the endurance test, just kept those the same throughout. You know, maybe you've got 6 to 8 tests, and actually you could have seen, as you said, that progression of people getting better. It gets known that those are the tests. Some people like preparing for the known and knowable, and it would have, you know, it'd have been easier to create a kind of more traditional sport because of that known and knowable element.
For sure. I think that's something that CrossFit should consider kind of keeping as a staple within region, you know, somewhere in the programming, be it the games or semi-finals or wherever. Like, you know, we've got all of the benchmark workouts, and again, some of my fondest memories of CrossFit Games workouts or regional workouts or whatever are those benchmark workouts and having world records for them. I think it was Mary with a handstand push-up.
Yeah.
I can't remember the workout off the top of my head now, but handstand push-up, pistols, and was it toaster bar pull-ups? Some
pull-ups, yeah,
pull-ups,
chest bar.
And just watching Kerry Price absolutely destroy that workout and set some crazy score that, you know, beat all the guys as well, if I remember correctly. And just, yeah, like one of those moments that's, you know, really in there, and that you can always pull that workout out again and re-deliver it and see how it works, and people can test it at home, and it's just like I just think that's one of the things of this kind of whole CrossFit methodology community thing that we should continue to elevate and keep at the forefront.
Repeats are fascinating to watch because you see the progression, like the snatch ladder repeat in 24. I mean, the field just improved so much. And I think this is where it's interesting because you could start to see, like, hey, has the field improved in gymnastics capacity? Has it improved in conditioning, or is it just improved in strength? And you can really do that with the repeats.
Definitely. But I think kind of building on what you were saying about, the federation having different categories, but you could almost sort of categorize some of the benchmark workouts within CrossFit and have these workouts that, we've done lifting, and to your point on previous podcasts that we've done around the programming is started to bias for strength quite heavily now. Excuse the pun, but we could potentially have these benchmark workouts fit into some designation, so that it could be like, oh, this is very gymnastics heavy or gymnastics bias. Let's see how the field's gymnastics has improved. And we have sort of done that with like Amanda and other bar muscle ups, the 30 ring muscle ups for time, and lots of other gymnastics. But I think there could be more done with that. I feel like we maybe haven't. It's a bit sparse in that regard, rather than doing it consistently. And
I think it would be interesting to see like some of these set tests, how good athletes could get at them, and use them as little benchmarks. If you then start getting the best athletes in the world to do this gymnastic endurance, other athletes would have a kind of a thing to chase, and you'd be able to see where they are. It's a bit hard. I think it's sometimes hard for general population to appreciate how good CrossFitters are if you don't do the movements. Even doing like the weights that they lift is probably the most simple one. Like, I'm always blown away by the strongmen. You see like a 500 kilo deadlift. You're like, holy, I mean, when does that get possible? But then the capacity that these guys have in gymnastics, or even just doing burpees over the bar, how quick they do burpees over the bar. It's like, and I think this is why the fans of the sport are often the people who participate themselves. Whereas, in football or tennis, you get lots of fans who don't necessarily do football or tennis.
Yeah. And that's kind of one thing that really feeds into the Open for me. The fact that you see what Open announcement, 2 or 3, 4 of the pros do the workout. Everyone goes, oh, that looks easy. Well, I'll scale back because I know I'm not quite as good as them. This will be my expectation. You do the workout, you don't even get half to where your expectation was. And that's because they make it look so easy most of the time. Even, the workout from not last year, the year before, which was the dumbbell snatch burpee over the dumbbell workout, which, not super high skill, not super heavy. Everyone can do it. And you just watch all the elites kind of put up crazy numbers in terms of scores.
I think it's often the simple workouts that are the most impressive. You're like, wow, because like you say, there's no reason why in this workout I can't be good. You take away the complex gymnastics, you take away the heavy weights, and you're like, wow, they're just so much better.
The simple couplets are always the worst workouts. They look the easiest on paper, and there's nowhere to hide. It's just 2 movements. You haven't got really anything other area else you can kind of like buffer fatigue. It's just like, all right, I'm doing these 2 things, and it just gets hard quick. It's deceptive because you like start flying and you're like, I'm crushing this, and then suddenly it'll hit you in one go. Just wanted to talk about the Syndicate Crown quickly, because this also got announced in terms of the invitations for this. So they, instead of using the Rogue top 20, they went from the CrossFit Games top 20 as their invitations. So this is the invitations for the Syndicate.
Yeah, I suppose it's a tricky one because from the calendar as well, like Syndicate's I think it's the same weekend as Madrid actually. So last weekend of May.
Yeah, so you got May 29th to 31st. You got Syndicate Crown, the NorCal Classic, and then the Mad Fitness Festival in Spain as well.
Yeah, so I think a lot of Europeans will choose Mad for obvious reasons. You then got NorCal happening same weekend, and a lot of athletes should have, all the Australian guys will be doing Praetorian, and a lot of athletes will have already got their tickets. So it'd be interesting to see how far down those qualifiers start to roll. Because I can't see many of the Europeans accepting a syndicate crown on the same weekend as Madrid. And the same, it being the weekend after Taurian. Again, I don't see that coming through. So you probably have like a couple of the US guys will have accepted, but in theory, if they've got their ticket before, I don't know if they'd end up competing unless it's big prize money.
You got the French Throwdown as well, a couple weekends before that as well for the Europeans. So yeah, it'd be interesting. If you have a look at some of the athletes on here, got a few Europeans and Maurice and Harry.
Yeah, I don't know. It'd be interesting to see how far it rolls down. Like, do you end up with, what do you do if, like, you start getting known, not all the games athletes? So you see what I mean? So you've gone through this year's games. Where's the next point? Because you can't really take it from semi-finals because each semi-final is different. You have to then go back to, say, 24 games. It'd be interesting how they decide to do their roll down system.
Or could they go into like the 20 to 30 spots at the games?
Yeah, but I think that might get filled. I think that I think they'd have to go beyond that.
Okay.
To fill, just because of what we spoke about, that a lot of these top guys will qualify early, and then couple that with Australians out and Europeans out, that takes a lot of the names away. So I think there's they're going to have to go to at least beyond 30 in order to fill up.
Yeah, and like you said, there's a fair few US semis before this one as well. Talks about Mayhem, and I think there's quite a lot of the same athletes on that invite list. Just quick question on that, actually. For Mayhem have sent out their invitations. Syndicate look like they're sending out theirs as well now. If you're an athlete and you get sent these invitations, what's kind of going through their brain at the moment? How do they prioritize this? We've kind of talked a bit about it, but if you're, I don't know, let's say Amy Kringle or Lucy Campbell, what are you thinking?
I think most of them will have it preset. I think the big one is Mayhem Classic. Do they want to get their ticket early? Probably the hardest one of the year, or do they just wait a bit? Wait a few weeks and pick because the level will inherently be lower, just because more people have qualified. They take something later on, and they don't involve the travel, which for them would maybe be French or something like that. But it's quite a bit of a wait to get to French from Mayhem.
And what do you think they'll have like a plan going in, like already, like a season plan before they get these invitations sort of come out? They'll be like, right, I'm hitting this competition. We're going to rest like an ideal plan, and then maybe like a plan B if that doesn't quite play out.
Yeah, 100%. And I think most athletes have a very good idea now. That the top athletes will have a very good idea of where they're going to go. And then for the fringe athletes, it'll probably have to be more adaptable in terms of like, okay, if I don't make it here, then I'll have to take this one as the next roll down. And they'll probably just want to have their options open to make sure they can get the ticket. Because even at the games, there's obvious jumps in level. There's probably the top 10, probably in and around like from 10th to early 20s, and then again a drop down. So I'd say at the games, there's obvious minor steps, but I do think there's probably 3 big steps in level that you end up seeing.
So we've talked quite a lot about the Open. And to qualify for all of these things, you have to do the Open. So we thought we'd have a little look at some of the Open numbers as it stands. So this is a graph by Known Unknowable, and this is basically tracking. We've got the weeks at the bottom here, so how many weeks until the Open, and then we've got sign-up numbers. So you can see that they're color coded here. Sorry,
days until the the start of the Open.
Oh, sorry, days. Yes, not weeks. Sorry, days. So you can see here that we've got the days down the bottom, and then it's color coded. So you've got 2026 is this yellow line here, and it. If I click on it and bring up my cursor, so you can see on day 42, these are the numbers compared to 2023, 2024, and 2026. So 17,946 registrations day one. And in 2024 we had 41,000. In 2023 we had 42,000. And as the days go on, so we are day 39 now in terms of day 39 days out till the Open starts. This is the tally that we're looking at. So 2026 we're on 31,278. And if we compare that to last year, actually up. Last year it was 15,073, but still down on prior years. So 2024, which seems to be kind of the biggest sort of post the glory days that a lot of us sort of talk about fairly regularly, that peak around kind of 2018, 2019, but 2024 was 52,000, 2023 was 47,000, 2022 was 23,000. So yeah, it's increased from last year, but still tracking slightly under 2023 and 2024.
I think it's also interesting how actually it can get quite predictable. So even at this stage, now with all the data, I mean, this is where the interesting thing with data happens, that they'll probably have a good idea of where they're going to finish already. So I think you'd say it's going to probably not as high as 23, 24, but you will end up higher than last year. 25, 22, 25.
It's sort of close. It's just above 22 at the moment. So it'd be interesting to see if it sort of follows that trajectory, because you can see on the graph here that sort of day 5 and day 3 are where we start seeing the sort of main spike. And for like 22, that's when we got to like 18,000, which is pretty close to 24 and 23 as well. And then they kind of took off actually weirdly after the Open started. This is like the weekend, so obviously everyone would get in the FOMO the day after the workouts dropped. And then -4, maybe that's people that on the day of submission, I can't remember, but maybe they're just kind of getting it in. It's weird that we've got post 7 days that people are jumping in, but all those FOMO guys and girls getting their spots.
Yeah, we spoke about it before. It's because it's a metric we can see. It's something that's often used to track the health a bit. I wonder if Mike Halpin, who puts this together, if he can impose the older numbers on as well, of like from 2018, because that'd be really interesting. Really interesting. See, it's also interesting. I think one thing that's interesting from the graph is like, so day one of Open signups this year, it was 17,000. And then day one of Open signups last year was 8,000. So it's like close to 200% improvement on the first day of opening, which is pretty huge. And it's interesting to see why does that. We're not going to answer the question because we don't have that data, but what's the reason for the jump? Was it because of everything that happened around the 2024 games and that stopped people from doing it? Have CrossFit put on a different marketing campaign? Is there something different? I know that CrossFit are actually kind of paying athletes to promote the Open last year. I don't know if they were the year before, but obviously things like that help to get the name out there and get it spread.
Yeah, 2024 was a tough year. I remember there being obviously some incidents in terms of quarterfinals and Open and stuff like that from judging incidents, and it just felt like there was kind of one thing after another that year in terms of CrossFit dropping the ball, and then obviously stuff surrounding the games. I think there was probably some people that didn't want to jump in, but yeah. The other thing I thought was interesting from this was you can see that 2023 and 2024 started way earlier in terms of sign-ups. I want to say way earlier, not like super earlier, but like, you know, good few days, a week in fact earlier, and they are the ones that got the biggest numbers overall on this graph. So is there a time duration thing as well? Like actually starting earlier seems to be smarter, and with the season then out so early, why not start your open registration sort of right at the beginning of the year?
Yeah, it's a good point. You know, it'd be really interesting to see, like, they say next year, if they just started, okay, so it opened, like, if they start on the 1st of January, so they start the earliest they have, can they actually start to beat the 24 numbers? Predict, you have so I failed miserably on my last prediction that we did on the show. Like, you beat me hands down.
I don't know. I think it was pretty close. We were pretty we were all both in the ballpark as well. But I think I just got the edge because I guessed 2 athletes correctly.
But I think this, I'm going to guess final number open sign up total.
Okay.
I'm going to say 300,000 this year.
Okay.
Which puts it, where is it? So it's like over 22 and 25, but not quite as high as the 23, 24.
Yeah, I reckon, I think it's going to be between the two, you know. I think it's going to be slightly more than 22, this purple line. I think probably like 28, 280,000, sorry, I should say. Okay. 280,000, I reckon, kind of in and around there.
Okay, so I'll go over 300, and you'll then go towards the 280. I think it's going to be, it'll be tight. I mean, based on what we know, unless there's some kind of crazy campaign that they're planning, I think that the numbers, you know, the tracking, we can start to have pretty good predictions.
Yeah, for sure. It'll be interesting to see how it goes. I do think that they could. I still think that there's more that CrossFit can do to really get people to buy into the open, and get them on board with it. Like we talked a bit about this, I think maybe on the last show, but I think for affiliates, I understand that, you know, a lot of what people who are pro the open and have been, you know, talking about it in their media outlets have been kind of saying, look, it's a great retention tool. It's a great way for athletes to kind of see year-on-year progress. It's great to put yourself out of your comfort zone. And, you know, I haven't been hearing messages like, I've never seen anyone do the open and regret it, even though it's a bit scary going into, and all this kind of stuff, which I get all of that. And I understand that, especially if you're very much, you know, a fan of CrossFit or work with them in any kind of capacity. I understand all that messaging. But I think for an affiliate, and we've talked about this, the other side of the coin is that you can run your own, you can still do, like, I know affiliates that do this as part of their class programming. You come in and do it. You can still use a score sheet. You can still benchmark yourself against other people, and you can put it into whatever app you use and see how you track on your gym leaderboard, which is really what most people who go to the gym, I think their CrossFit affiliate care is like, how did I do against my mate? Not necessarily how did I do against Laura Horvath or James Sprague or whoever it is, you know. And while it is kind of fun to see outside of the world, especially if perhaps you're in an age group division that you haven't got a high representation of in your gym, so you're like working out with all the kids and you're like, well, I'm obviously not gonna beat them, or maybe you do and you're a hero, but I think you probably get the point. But I think that can happen at a local level, and you don't necessarily need to pay the money to sign up and do it. And I think that open registration would be bigger if there was some sort of reasons for gyms to kind of get involved. And there are loads of ideas around this, like perhaps if you get a certain number of signups, you get some money off your affiliation fee, or whatever it is. That there's so many ideas that you can come up with to help promote this, and for gyms to kind of get more on board and getting it to their members, and even just coaches. Like, one of the things that I'm gutted that CrossFit never figured out how to bring back was when Reebok sponsored CrossFit. coaches got a discount on Reebok apparel. And it made such a difference because a lot of coaches don't make loads of money, and some coaches are lucky enough to kind of get gifted stuff, which is amazing. But many coaches out there, you know, live in gym kit and have to constantly buy the latest stuff, and it's pretty expensive now. Some trainers are like, you know, £150 or dollars or whatever it is. Back in the day, a set of nanos, you know, sometimes they were, especially when Reebok messed up their pricing thing for a day. I think people were getting them for $5 or something mental, if you remember that, back in like 2015, I think it was.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that because basically gym owners are the event organizers of this, and so incentivizing a bit more. I completely agree. Like, it is already great for the community, but you could probably get a bit of a buy-in if you did this shared revenue scheme or something in that vein to help out. And, you know, it would be great for Velites, let's say, you know, getting people to know about the brand a bit more. It could be a great way for them to get into markets they're not already known about.
Definitely. And just like I said, if you can get coaches on board with stuff, they're the people talking to the gym members every day, that they'll bring it up at class, they'll really drive it for you. But for a lot of coaches, they're, you know, working loads already and interact with all these guys and girls, and there isn't really any reason for them unless they're really passionate about the Open or competing themselves, to drive it. So I think there could be more done, and in a fun way that everyone feels like they're included in it, and it feels like it's a fun thing to partake in, because at the moment it sort of feels a bit like do the Open because that's what it feels like. We're holding on to a tradition rather than it feel like it's relevant in 2025 is all I would 2026 even is all I would say. That's kind of how it feels to me a little bit at the moment.
It's an interesting point. And I think that, like, we mentioned this a little bit about, but like the technology, like, could CrossFit be implementing some kind of technology as well, rather than just like tracking for the gyms, tracking for every day, helping people to, you know, log scores worldwide and do that from a daily basis. It'd be interesting to see. You know, they have their own affiliate programming now. Could you somehow kind of combine that so you get this kind of worldwide leaderboard of how people are doing, how's their fitness going? You know, can you demonstrate in this? I mean, imagine you've got 300,000 people doing the Open. Can you start to demonstrate like huge health data of people improving over time, people who more, you know, could you say that, and I think we'd all agree on that answer, but could you demonstrate with data that people who go to the gym and train CrossFit end up healthier and fitter than someone who doesn't? And that kind of stuff is really valuable to know. And they're in a great position to be able to implement things like that.
I think that's a really great idea, especially centered around the CAP programming, and what a great advert for it as well. If you could somehow show that people doing CAP program gyms that are doing that, and members that have been following that, are, you know, how they're doing it. You know, you see some of that data coming out around how gyms that have got the most signups and some of that stuff. But if you could actually start looking at like performance metrics and crossing that, and even for some of we've talked about, obviously the program, you know, athletes on the program, there's maybe ways that you could correlate who's training what and who's doing what to how they're performing. And yeah, it feels like there's loads of potential. I should also say on CrossFit sort of side, the app and being able to see how you've performed over the years is great. And obviously that is, you know, it is for free for anyone, you know, who signs up to the Open and uses it. But obviously it's not free in terms of they have to pay to maintain that and make it better every year. So I appreciate you kind of get access to the data and stuff like that from signing up. And that is a great benefit. I just think there could be a bit more to really get everyone super excited about it and involved. Awesome. Well, that's pretty much it, I think, for this week. Have you got anything else that you wanted to discuss, John, before we wrap up?
No, I think that's good. We're going to start speaking to some more guests as well to keep the knowledge flowing. Get some more behind the scenes people on. So I think that'd be interesting. We spoke before the call, but bringing some athletes on as well, which I think we could end up in some very interesting discussions there. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, definitely same. And I've really enjoyed both the behind the scenes we've done so far. You know, looking at the Mad Fitness Festival and also looking at the story of Velites. So yeah, if you haven't listened to those, definitely go back and listen to those. They're on our feed. They're not on the YouTube feed at the moment. You might be watching this if you're watching the live or watching the live retrospectively. But they are online, so kind of Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcasts, you can go back and check them out. So they're really fascinating. I enjoyed both those episodes, and I hope everyone else has who has listened to them. And it'd be super exciting to get more guests on. So keen for that. I'll try and keep my open rants down to a minimum though. Awesome. Well, thank you for everyone for listening. John, thank you as always. Really interesting chat. And we've got the season. I mean, it'll be here before we know it. It'll be open before we know it. It looks like we're 39, 38 days away now. So it'll be here before we know it.
Okay. Thanks. Thank you.
Awesome team. Have a great week, and we'll speak to you on the next one.